I was playing Battlefield 4 the other day on a rush server and I ran into a bit of a dilemma. Whilst I was having fun, as I often do in Battlefield 4, I think that a few things kind of made themselves pretty obvious in the game, and it was something that I wanted to make a video on. It surrounds Battlefield in general though, not just Battlefield 4, and the steps that DICE need to take in order to push the game forward and make the game better, but many things had me caught in two minds. Take vehicles in Battlefield 4 for example. I absolutely love them. For anyone that's watched this channel for a while, you know that I started it looking at attack helicopters and attack helicopter guides. I have thousands of hours playing in tanks, LAVs and attack helicopters, trying to master the skill required whilst having a load of fun in the process. From the perspective of an infantry player though, as you'll see throughout this video, turning up against vehicles can be incredibly frustrating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Is it because currently Battlefield 4 has completely overpowered vehicles? I think a few vehicles definitely could do with a rework, and you also need to consider the power of thermal, you know, the black and white optics you get with pretty much every single vehicle, as that is completely overpowered. There's no direct counter to it. Well, you do have DICE camo, but loads of people don't even know that exists. The problem though might also lie in other areas. This discussion went on for a while, and it got me thinking about other things. Battlefield as a franchise needs to adapt with more than just vehicle balance. There's so much that needs to move forward in the franchise, as gaming isn't the same as it used to be back in the days of the original Battlefield games where people loved big open maps and team play, and it certainly isn't where we're currently at with Battlefield 5 with attrition and all this forced team play. In this video I'm going to discuss 3 points that I believe DICE need to address and adapt when it comes to the gameplay in Battlefield. As with many of these things and discussion points, the community often don't know what they want, and I'm guilty of that as well. I'll say, I don't like this, and then 2 months later I'll really enjoy it. Or I'll say, that's a bad idea, and then it turns out it's a really good idea. I think though, you have to discuss these things, you have to work out where the community is, and maybe, and I don't want to say educate the community, but maybe explain to people why it's a good idea or why things aren't a good idea, and keep the discussion going. So, the 3 points. I'll start with the vehicle infantry balance. I'll then move on to modes. In general in Battlefield I think there needs to be some work with the modes, and then the final point will be looking at the player count for different modes and how Battlefield can adapt that. So the vehicle infantry balance. This is the balance between vehicles on the map and the infantry on the map. Obviously some modes are only infantry based, and in Battlefield 4 we had only vehicle modes, but let's just focus on Conquest or Breakthrough or Rush, where you have vehicles and infantry working together. As I explained at the start of this video, I have loads of experience playing in vehicles, but also a lot of experience being on the receiving end of them as well. I understand how epic it can be cutting through a line of infantry in a tank, or blasting Zuni rockets into a building, destroying everything that's inside. I get that it's fun, and I'm not about to say that needs to change. That's why Battlefield's so epic. What I do want to say though is, in order for Battlefield to be less frustrating and more rewarding, the balance between infantry and vehicles needs to be addressed. Too often I've joined a game on Battlefield 1 to be flattened by some base camping mortar truck, or steamrolled by a low skill Muramet's carpet bombing an objective. On Battlefield 5 the Ju-88 has been traumatising infantry players for years. Take a look at Fiel 652. That map is absolutely appalling when it comes to vehicle infantry balance. On Battlefield 3 you've been able to orbit in an attack helicopter peppering infantry from miles away, whilst the jets, incredibly fun as they may be, are very strong and can single-handedly lock down a Conquest server. To counter that, there are plenty of anti-vehicle weapons and also other vehicles you can use to counter them yourself, but that's not the point. The focus is on the wrong thing here. Playing Rush on Battlefield 4 highlighted this for me. Map design must restrict some vehicles from gaining access to certain parts of the map and certain objectives, allowing infantry to battle it out themselves. This is best seen on Zavod, right in the centre of the map. Tanks can get above and they can drive on that kind of platform, but they are vulnerable underneath. Also, you have infantry underneath or on top of that building. They can get all over the place, get many advantageous angles on vehicles, forcing them to back up and fight for different flags. I think Hammerhead Part of the Final Stand DLC for Battlefield 4 also shows this really well. The whole central part of that objective under that big hill in the bunker cannot be accessed by vehicles. I know you can kind of drive through the middle on the ice, but that's about it. It makes the balance of that map a lot better. Whilst it's not a perfect map, I kind of enjoy being able to get away from vehicles on certain objectives if I want to. Whilst this point was about infantry and vehicles and the balance between them, I think maybe the focus shouldn't be on the vehicles themselves, although there are a few outliers like the Muromets that are just broken. I think maybe the focus needs to be on maps that cater to better gameplay between infantry and vehicles, and then of course, and this will be the final point for this vehicle infantry balance section, the amount of vehicles you have on a map. Some maps do it really, really well. You have just the right amount of infantry and just the right amount of vehicles. It's a very difficult balance to strike, a very fine balance to strike. You want vehicle gameplay that is very fun, as it has been in Battlefield 3 and 4, and maybe in the recent Battlefields as well if you like that sort of stuff. It also needs to be really rewarding with a high skill ceiling, but not at the expense of infantry players being farmed. I don't want to join a server, and this sounds pretty rich coming from me who spent so much time in an attack helicopter, but I don't want to join a server and be farmed 10-15 times by some guy in an attack helicopter with unlimited ammo in his big metal box hiding behind a building. It's not very fun, and there are ways around that. Next up, let's take a look at modes. Modes in Battlefield is kind of what defines each game. You look at Bad Company 2 and you think of Rush. You look at Battlefield 3 and you think of Rush and Conquest. Same with Battlefield 4. Battlefield 1 was all about operations, and Battlefield 5 I suppose is about conquest and breakthrough. Modes in Battlefield are so important. DICE certainly can't make the same mistake they did with Battlefield 5, only allowing a handful of playable modes to be accessed due to some technical issue, and those stupidly infuriating limited time modes. You want to play Grind, you see a top play, somebody playing Grind, you're like, yes, I want to go and play that, and you can't because it's been removed from the game. In my opinion, Operations is a mode that definitely needs to return, not Grand Operations, the operations we had in Battlefield 1. Rush is also a classic in the Battlefield Bad Company 2 or maybe Battlefield 3 form, whilst Conquest is of course a staple mode. Frontlines is the perfect 32-player infantry mode in my opinion, no vehicles should be on that one at all, and then you might choose Domination or TDM to kind of finish it up. It's not like DICE have a shortage of options when it comes to modes, they've made loads of them in Battlefield 5, a game that apparently doesn't have enough time for new content. The point of this discussion though is how Battlefield will adapt the game, and I think the modes need to adapt as well. You can argue that all the modes in the franchise went backwards with Battlefield 5, Grand Operations being the highlight there as it was a complete grand failure. No more limited time modes, no more half-baked recreations or adaptions, proper tried and tested modes with the sort of map design that made Battlefield so popular in the first place. Finally, let's look at the player count, and this is perhaps the most important and potentially controversial point in this video. Let's see what you think. This one is another discussion point that I think I've seen a few other YouTubers talk about. For a long time, Battlefield has focused on 64 players as the main event. No other game could get close to Battlefield back in the day when you consider the different aspects to the all-out war and conquest. Quite often these maps as well would change over time with different weather or levolution. Just incredible. So much went on. You had things like bullet drop, you had explosions happening all around you. Just nothing else could really get close to that. When Battlefield 3 came out, it was so groundbreaking on that new engine. Battle Royale games though since came out with 100 players, yet DICE stuck with 64 players on Firestorm in Battlefield 5 for some reason. Yes, they might be limited by the engine they're using, however, other games can move forward. DICE, a massive studio, producing incredible games in the past, maybe BF5 isn't under that umbrella, why can't they move forward as well? I think the next Battlefield game should really push towards that 100 player mark on some modes, bringing something that no other game has before. Yes, we should still have 32 player, 48 player and 64 player modes, of course, because they work and people enjoy them, but having a leading, groundbreaking mode with 100 players or more, all on the same server, should be considered. As the title of this video suggests, Battlefield needs to adapt in order to fend off the competition, or maybe even catch up with the competition, and upping the player count to 50 a side or more could be just the edge they need. It could maybe give you that feeling. Remember when you first logged into Battlefield 1 and you saw all-out war? We need to go beyond that. Prove that Battlefield has still got something groundbreaking to offer. So what do you think of this list? It's of course not exhaustive. There are many other things they could look to adapt. Am I completely mad and barking up the wrong tree when it comes to this vehicle infantry balance? And do you think that maybe new modes are needed, or adapting the old ones, or just take the ones that already work? And finally, do DICE need to look at more than 64 players? Should we be seeing 100 players in total on a server? Let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below. Again, leave a like if you enjoyed or a dislike if you didn't. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.